The story begins with a man from a clan that was destroyed by the demonic sect, seeking revenge. Under the bright moonlight, he sneaks into the demonic sect's base, silently eliminating the guards one by one. He then drags one of the guards' bodies and confronts their leader, known as the Heavenly Demon. The man introduces himself as Kong Wunshin and declares that he will kill the Heavenly Demon with his own hands tonight. Wunshin then leaps toward the Heavenly Demon, attempting to unleash a lightning fist attack, but the Heavenly Demon counters with blood-tied art, leaving a scratch across Wunshin's face. Undeterred, Wunshin launches another fierce attack in an effort to overwhelm him. This time, Wunshin's strike lands, sending the Heavenly Demon crashing into a wall. With no other option, the Heavenly Demon takes out a jar of elixir and drinks it. Witnessing this, Wunshin grows uneasy. He knows the elixir will trigger a dangerous transformation known as demonic chi deviation. Moments later, the Heavenly Demon emits a powerful chi that shines with intense light. Suddenly, he reappears beside Wunshin, attempting to end his life. But to his shock, a barrier forms around Wunshin, deflecting the attack. A great mage appears on the scene just in time. The mage apologizes for being late and asks Wunshin, "Is this the nemesis you were talking about?" The scene then shifts to someone reading a Muram novel, wondering why a random high-level mage from a different world suddenly appeared out of nowhere. His name is Jin Seowoon, a 23-year-old who was discharged from military service 6 months ago and is now preparing to return to college. Like many others nearing the end of their service, Seowoon had a well-structured plan: earn certifications, prepare for university, and catch up on everything he couldn't study during his time in the military. But after rejoining society, he realized just how many fun things he had missed. With a bit of money left in his account, Seowoon debated whether to find a part-time job. Instead, he walked into an internet cafe and ended up playing a game called Loyal Ground for 10 hours straight. It had been a casual game he played occasionally during leave, but now, after being discharged, he began playing seriously, and within 3 months, he ranked among the top 10 players. He even made a bit of money from local tournaments occasionally held at internet cafes. The game works like this: 100 players drop from a plane onto a battlefield. It's a survival game where players must scavenge weapons scattered around the map and fight until only one remains. Seowoon is exceptionally good at it, and his teammates always rely on his guidance, whether it's when to farm, rotate, or seek the safe zone first. This time, only 3 players remain: Seowoon and 2 enemies. One of the enemies enters a building, spots some loot, and assumes Seowoon hasn't been there yet. What he doesn't realize is that Seowoon is hiding just behind the door. A moment later, the second enemy hears a sudden commotion inside the building, followed by a system notification: your teammate has been eliminated. Realizing too late that Seowoon had been lying in wait, the last enemy tries to flee, but Seowoon catches and eliminates him as well. Victory! Seowoon's friend laughs, thanking him for carrying the match. Moments later, Seowoon receives a message from his mom letting him know she has transferred his academy fees and added a little extra for him. He thanks her, then turns to his friend and says he won't be playing anymore starting tomorrow. He needs to start attending an English academy. Seowoon always feels a pang of guilt whenever he sees messages from his mom. He's been living like this for months now. Back at home, Seowoon lies in bed, scrolling through his phone. He reads a news article about mysterious individuals appearing abroad, claiming to possess supernatural powers. They're calling themselves players. But just as he's reading, the page suddenly disappears. "Guess I'll just sleep," he mumbles. The next morning, Seowoon walks down the street while reading a message from his friend asking for help with a clan war. Seowoon hesitates, wondering if he should help one last time. But before he can decide, a blinding light flashes behind him, engulfing his body and leaving only his bag lying on the sidewalk. When Seowoon regained consciousness, he heard loud noises around him. He saw people fighting and speaking in different languages. Noticing that they wore various outfits and wielded weapons, he wondered why there were so many cosplayers around. He also saw people using magic and began to wonder if he was just dreaming. Seowoon then stood up and questioned where he was. Suddenly, a system notification appeared, stating that 100 players had been detected and the system was initializing. Another notification followed, announcing that language synchronization was now 100% complete. After that, everyone suddenly began speaking the same language. Meanwhile, Seowoon noticed a mage confronting another person. The mage then used his ability to attack, striking the target with a lightning bolt. To their surprise, the target felt nothing. Witnessing this made Seowoon think that this was too realistic to be a dream. Moments later, the system announced that the game was about to begin. The difficulty level was set to easy, and players needed to make it into the top 90. The designated map was the King Kingdom's capital, with rewards for the top 10 and above. In the waiting room, attacks between players were neutralized. The system then provided a brief explanation for those accessing Cloyd Survival for the first time. The game would run for 100 days, with each day causing the map to become slightly more limited. If players ventured outside the restricted area, they could face severe consequences. The game would continue until only one survivor remained. Once the game ended or a player was eliminated, they would return to their original world. Players who failed to make it into the top 90 would not be able to participate in Cloyd Survival again. Soon, players would be transported to their desired locations with the help of Argas Gaze. They could obtain items at these locations to help them secure a spot in the top 90. After learning about Cloyd Survival, Seowoon was surprised and wondered if he was dreaming about Loyal Ground. He thought that even if this were a dream, amidst all these absurd humans, he would probably die. Even if it was just a dream, he didn't want to die. Suddenly, a big guy with a sword called out to Seowoon, mocking his messy hair. He asked why Seowoon kept looking around and where he was from. Seowoon didn't respond, which made the guy angry. With only 3 seconds left before the game started, Seowoon smiled, causing the guy to become even more irritated. The guy asked why Seowoon was laughing. With just 1 second remaining, Seowoon flipped the guy the middle finger, thinking that with his knowledge of log abilities, he could easily defeat people like him and survive. The game began. Cloyd Survival, Day 1, and all the players started to descend into the game. Seowoon noticed that players were landing in crowded areas where many items were scattered. He thought that, according to the game, these crowded areas did indeed have more items, but he figured it would be safer to start on the outskirts. After choosing a location, Seowoon descended to the ground and felt a wave of motion sickness. He realized he needed to find a house to enter as soon as possible. However, a sense of unease crept over him. Because of the motion sickness, he hadn't been able to see who else had landed with him. If he encountered any enemies without a weapon, he was done for. After closing the door, Seowoon wondered if that sword-wielding bastard from earlier had followed him. He regretted provoking him, thinking it was a mistake. Hearing no sounds, Seowoon decided to search the house for any useful items. He soon found a heavy crossbow, which was a bit too heavy for him, but still better than nothing. As soon as he equipped it, the instructions on how to use it naturally flowed into his mind. Seowoon decided to test it by firing an arrow at the wall, and the result shocked him. He thought this could be really useful if he learned how to use it properly. He continued to search but couldn't find anything else useful. The map was vast, which he considered a good thing. If he didn't run into any enemies at the start, he could farm in peace. Upon entering another house, Seowoon found a small healing scroll that could heal injuries if the scroll was ripped. After learning about the scroll, Seowoon decided to gather more recovery items and hoped to find an item bag. His eyes then caught something on a bookshelf. Upon closer inspection, he discovered a Black Star Leader's martial arts book that allowed the user to project dark energy through their fingers. The system asked Seowoon if he wanted to learn the book, and when Seowoon selected yes, the book began to float, shining brightly before slowly fading away. After that, Seowoon noticed a sudden change in the thickness of the skin on his hands. Curious, he grabbed a fork, threw it against the wall, and observed the result. With a smile, Seowoon thought to himself that he had just learned a martial art. Things were starting to look good for Seowoon. The presence of martial arts books likely meant that magic books existed too. Regardless, he was now certain, Cloyd Survival and Loyal Ground were the same game. Having searched the entire house, Seowoon decided it was time to move on. The sun had already risen while he was farming, so he needed to find a place to hide. Up ahead, he spotted the only house with its lights still on. He figured that either a rare item was hidden inside, or someone was already there. Seowoon quietly entered and cautiously checked the first floor. It was silent, he didn't hear a thing. He then moved to the second floor, where he saw a lit lantern. Suspicious that it might be a trap, he noticed a room beside the lantern and broke down its door. After checking inside, he found no one there. Relieved, Seowoon searched the room and discovered a ring, the Ring of Strength. When equipped, it increased the user's strength by 20. As soon as he put it on, he was amazed. His body felt much lighter, and he could barely feel the weight of the crossbow anymore. Afterward, he returned to the first floor to search more thoroughly. There, he found a subspace ring, which allowed the user to store items in a subspace when equipped. Using the subspace felt strange at first, but it was incredibly convenient. He no longer needed to carry everything around like a bag. Seowoon couldn't help but think how amazing it would be to have something like this in real life. Seowoon wondered if there had still been 0 eliminations, so he checked the interface for a kill log. Upon checking, he saw that only 1 person had been eliminated. He originally planned to keep farming until only 90 participants remained, but instead, he had managed to search several houses and gather a large number of consumable items. He was lucky enough to find many hidden weapons to use alongside his Black Star Chi Palms. Seowoon debated whether he should start moving or stay put until sunrise. He remembered the strong individuals he saw back in the waiting room, likely now roaming through the darkness. At his current level, Seowoon knew he stood no chance against them. Thinking there might be fewer people out at night, he decided to visit one more location before the sun came up. While walking outside, he suddenly heard a terrifying growl from a werewolf and quickly hid. However, another werewolf spotted him and tried to smash him. Fortunately, Seowoon dodged just in time. Believing this was a PvP game, he hadn't expected monsters to appear. He ran, trying to escape, and found a house up ahead. He rushed inside and slammed the door shut. Peeking through a crack, he noticed the werewolves sniffing around, likely tracking his scent. He realized he had to take the initiative. Aiming his crossbow at one of the werewolves, he fired and eliminated it. Now, only 1 remained. The remaining werewolf broke through the door and slashed Seowoon's face. As it lunged at him, Seowoon fired another arrow, but the werewolf blocked it with its arm. Then it leapt at him again, and for a moment, Seowoon wondered if this was how he would be eliminated. But he didn't give up. He activated his subspace, drew a weapon, and unleashed the Black Star Chi Palms to destroy the creature. With a serious expression, Seowoon declared, "I can't afford to lose to a mere underling." After defeating the werewolves, a bag dropped to the ground. Seowoon opened it but was disappointed to find only a bottle of water and some jerky. He sighed, thinking he could just hunt for food later anyway. While eating, Seowoon scanned his surroundings and spotted a piece of armor. He tried it on, but it was too big for him at first. To his surprise, the armor automatically adjusted to fit his body. Once equipped, it significantly increased his resistance to fire and wind magic. Amazed by its benefits, Seowoon continued searching the area. As he checked the tables, his knee bumped into something invisible. Curious, he kicked around and wondered if it might be a hidden item. He picked it up and discovered it was a night cloak. By equipping the night cloak, he gained the ability to blend perfectly into the darkness when standing still. While hidden, he couldn't be detected by magic, and any sounds he made were completely suppressed. With this, Seowoon knew he could avoid anyone he encountered at night and survive for as long as necessary. While walking through a random area, Seowoon suddenly heard a noise and instinctively went into hiding. Peering out, he spotted an injured man stumbling forward, gasping for breath. The man didn't look strong. Seowoon figured he could take him out easily. He raised his bow, aiming at the stranger, but hesitated. He tried to convince himself, he's not a real person. It's just a game. Before he could decide, a burst of magical fire shot through the air and struck the injured man, instantly eliminating him. Seowoon flinched, wondering if the man had actually died. But then he noticed, there was no corpse, only a chest left behind. That confirmed it. They were definitely inside a game. As he pondered where the magic had come from, a figure walked directly in front of him. Seowoon held his breath. Thanks to his night cloak, the person didn't notice him at all. He watched silently as the figure approached the chest, checking what the eliminated player had dropped. A chilling realization struck Seowoon. I could be next. He understood now. Every hesitation was an opportunity for someone else to climb the ranks. If he wanted to survive, he couldn't afford to second-guess himself. An arrow was fired at the man who was looting the chest, but fortunately, he had an invisible barrier protecting him. Seowoon continued to shoot arrows at the barrier, not stopping until it finally shattered. The man grew anxious as his barrier was destroyed and began to wonder where Seowoon was hiding. The force of the impact created a strong gust of wind that lifted Seowoon's cloak, revealing his location. The man quickly attempted to cast a fire spell, but before he could release it, Seowoon's dagger pierced his forehead, eliminating him instantly. Seowoon couldn't believe he had won. A chest dropped from the eliminated player, and he rushed to loot it as quickly as possible before leaving. While searching through the chest, he obtained Escrow's necklace, a pure gold necklace that signifies membership in Escrow's magic society. He also acquired a circle stone, a magical item that allows the user to engrave a mana circle around their heart, enabling them to use mana. Once activated, the user can learn the magic associated with that circle. Determined to use the circle stone, Seowoon searched for a safe place. Once he found one, he entered and prepared to activate the item. The system warned him that using the stone would render him motionless for 3 hours, during which he would be unable to perform any actions or use items. It also cautioned that he might experience pain as the circle formed. Seowoon endured the intense pain, suppressing the urge to scream, and spent the next 3 hours in agony. Afterward, upon checking his status, he discovered that he could now hold 2 jobs simultaneously, and for the first time, he had a mana stat. Realizing that 2 players had already died, Seowoon checked the remaining number of survivors. The count had dropped significantly. That's when he noticed a player named Nam Sagwon was on a killing spree. Seowoon hoped he wouldn't run into this Nam Sagwon person. Suddenly, he realized that if things kept going this way, it might actually be possible for him to break into the top 10. Before the game started, they had announced a reward for players who reached that rank. Seowoon wondered what it could be. Determined, he decided it was time to finish up and start moving. He could definitely feel a surge of power growing within him. Opening his subspace, he took out the magic book he had looted the day before. The system asked if he wanted to use it. When he pressed the "Yes" button, the magic book slowly vanished, transferring its spell directly into his mind. Seowoon then attempted to cast a magic wind ball. At first, he was disappointed. The wind balls appeared tiny and unimpressive. He casually released one behind him, but to his surprise, it caused a massive explosion upon hitting the wall. It was far stronger than it looked. He figured it would definitely come in handy. However, after using that much magic, Seowoon suddenly felt drained. As time passed, a restricted zone began appearing on the map, and its boundary gradually shrank. He decided to keep farming while staying near the edge of the zone. Meanwhile, an old martial artist was observing Seowoon from a distance. He found Seowoon intriguing, so he continued following him to study his movements. Half a day later, Seowoon came across a house with several open chests scattered outside. As he stood there, he suddenly sensed a presence and instinctively cast his magic wind balls toward the door. The spell destroyed it instantly. Seowoon paused, wondering if it was just the wind playing tricks on him. He was sure he'd felt someone nearby, yet saw no one. Looking more closely through the hole, he noticed fresh blood drops on the floor. Someone injured was there. Seowoon figured they had to be strong to have survived this long. With that thought, he turned around and pretended to leave. As he walked away, his image began to fade. The man who had been watching him cautiously emerged from hiding, relieved that he'd reacted quickly, otherwise, he might have been killed. Still, he believed he could have taken care of Seowoon easily if he hadn't been injured. He approached one of the chests to loot it, but before he could react, an arrow pierced through his head, eliminating him instantly. From the shadows, Seowoon quietly thanked the man for showing himself so quickly, then remarked that he'd farm for a bit before heading to the edge of the restricted zone. Suddenly, the old man appeared behind Seowoon and said, "You're pretty skilled." Seowoon panicked, realizing he'd let his guard down. But the old man quickly reassured him, saying there was no need to be afraid. He only wanted to ask a few questions. At that moment, Seowoon noticed something different about this old man. He wasn't like anyone else Seowoon had encountered so far. The old man asked Seowoon if he had participated in this kind of play before. He shared that he had been observing Seowoon for a while and noticed how quickly he adapted. Seowoon replied that it was his first time being brought there, but he had played a similar game in the world he came from. The old man was surprised by Seowoon's response and asked if the game was similar to what they were currently doing. He then requested Seowoon to explain the game he was referring to. Seowoon responded that he believed they could be easily ambushed in that area. Sensing that the conversation might take a while, the old man suggested they continue elsewhere. He then grabbed Seowoon and moved at an incredible speed while carrying him. At that moment, Seowoon had no idea what kind of consequences their encounter would bring. The old man brought Seowoon to the top of a tree, and they continued their conversation there. Seowoon explained that his world was a place of highly advanced civilization. The old man said he now understood how Seowoon was able to adapt to the game so quickly. He then revealed that he had been watching Seowoon since the moment they were dropped into that place. He added that he originally intended to enjoy the fresh mountain air for the next 100 days, but he became intrigued by Seowoon's actions. His curiosity about why they were brought there ultimately led him to initiate the conversation. Seowoon explained that the game he mentioned was just a form of entertainment, meant to be played for fun, not for real danger, and certainly not with actual death. So, when it came to the motives of the supernatural beings capable of abducting people from another world, he admitted there was no way for him to understand their intentions. However, Seowoon added that he was certain this game would serve as a significant opportunity for someone. He explained that dying in the game didn't mean dying for real. Upon death, a player would be given a rank and rewarded accordingly. Seowoon believed the rewards consisted of the items obtained within the game, not just the gear carried on one's body, but also the skills and martial arts learned during gameplay. He was sure that someone like the old man wouldn't need those rewards, but for people struggling in life, such abilities could be life-changing. To Seowoon, the old man seemed like a martial arts master. He was certain the man had followers in his own world. That was a far cry from someone like Seowoon, who didn't feel particularly useful in his own. The old man laughed after hearing Seowoon's earnest thoughts. As Seowoon shared tips and tricks that might be useful in this world, and listened to stories about the old man's homeland, the night quickly gave way to morning. The old man then said that since he had learned so much about the game from Seowoon, he wanted to know if there was anything he could do in return. Seowoon asked if it would be possible for him to learn some of the old man's martial arts, because he genuinely wanted to survive until the end. The old man replied that he wouldn't say it was impossible, but Seowoon had to be prepared for the worst. And by the worst, he meant death. Looking Seowoon in the eye, he asked, "So, what will it be?" The old man told Seowoon that succeeding outside the traditional path comes at a hefty price. He then asked Seowoon if he was prepared for that. But Seowoon replied that people don't die in the game they're currently in. His response made the elder consider that, if that's the case, then using such a method might be possible, and worth trying, at the very least. Seowoon then asked the elder what he should do. The elder first checked how much inner energy Seowoon had and was surprised to discover that it was even less than his house dog's. Without hesitation, the elder instructed Seowoon to sit in the lotus position. He warned him that he would experience pain akin to death, yet he wouldn't be able to move. He added that Seowoon must endure it, because if he failed, he would die. All of Seowoon's senses were on edge. The wind against his skin felt like sharp blades, and each breath entering his lungs burned like molten lava. He could even hear the faint sound of ants crawling through the grass. Moments later, he began to feel something unfamiliar, an intense pain, just as the elder had described. For a moment, Seowoon wondered if he was going to die. Sweat gradually appeared on his face as the ordeal continued. Eventually, it was over, but not without consequence. Seowoon vomited from the strain. Observing him closely, the elder remarked that Seowoon's endurance was impressive. It indicated that his body was not weak and that he possessed an innate potential. Now that the elder had corrected the flow of his chi, Seowoon's body would no longer be the same. The elder explained that he had slightly displaced Seowoon's soul and created an inspiratory gate in that space. He elaborated that while all people are naturally born to absorb the world's chi through breathing, Seowoon now had an additional gate, one that allowed him to take in a special kind of energy beyond ordinary respiration. Humans are composed of body, mind, and soul, the elder said. These three are bound together by what we call life chi. He then asked Seowoon, "What happens to life chi when a person dies?" Seowoon replied, "It disappears." The elder shook his head. "That is incorrect," he said calmly. "It doesn't disappear, it disperses. The dispersed life chi is naturally absorbed by the environment, allowing the cycle of life to continue. However, some view this natural process as a waste. These individuals go as far as committing murder to absorb the life chi of others. Yet, those who fill their bodies with stolen life chi become unstable. Eventually, the balance of their yin and yang collapses, leading to the loss of their martial arts, or even death. The mind technique passed down to Seowoon by the elder enables him to absorb scattered life chi in a similar way, enhancing his inner energy. Upon hearing this, Seowoon worries he might truly die. But the elder explains that Seowoon is different. Unlike the others, who reconstructed their veins to create a gate, the elder used Seowoon's soul instead. The elder told Seowoon that he didn't have any inner energy at all, it was like a blank sheet. Therefore, the elder had adjusted Seowoon's veins, allowing him to absorb life chi harmoniously. He then asked Seowoon if he understood why the elder had given him the mind technique, which was forbidden in Zhongyuan. Seowoon replied that it was because of the game's setting. The elder confirmed, saying yes, and expressed his admiration for Seowoon's quick understanding. The elder shared that he had sensed it yesterday, the areas where people had died, leaving behind life chi. He explained that the biggest issue with this mind technique was that it could only lead to great success through murder. But here, in this situation, that was not a problem. To survive, if Seowoon could eliminate others, by the end of the 100 days, he would have reached quite a high level. After explaining everything, the elder said it was time for them to part ways. Seowoon asked him to wait, explaining that since the elder had helped him so much, he begged the elder to at least tell him his name. The elder then revealed his name, Jang Dochian, and mentioned that everyone called him Deep Valley Standing Kindly. He also told Seowoon that the mind technique he had taught him was called the White Martial Physique Arts. Seowoon thanked Jang Dochian, promising that he would never forget his kindness. Jang Dochian then told Seowoon to get used to deep breathing. By accumulating inner energy through concentration on his dantian, Seowoon would slowly become stronger. Jang Dochian, impressed by the game map Seowoon had taught him, found it quite convenient. He told Seowoon that they would meet again when the opportunity arose, and then he left. As Seowoon watched Jang Dochian depart, he thought to himself that if he could use Qigong, he would be able to travel as comfortably as the elder. He then began moving, planning to head toward the outskirts of the restricted area, as he had originally intended. Seowoon noticed a house with a lantern still lit, even though it was night. He thought to himself that either the house was empty or it belonged to a newbie who didn't know how to turn the light off. But Seowoon decided that tonight, he would go inside. When he entered, he found no one there, so he turned off the light and began farming. However, he was disappointed when he only found useless items. As he yawned, Seowoon realized he hadn't slept at all the night before because he had been talking to the elder all night long. So, he put on his invisible cloak and went to sleep. The night passed, and the sun rose, marking the start of day 5 in the Cloyd Survival game. Seowoon was still asleep when he suddenly heard someone speaking, remarking that the house didn't seem empty. Panicking, Seowoon realized the sun was already high in the sky, and he was still sleeping soundly. The person entered the room, saying that he could finally rest. But he was taken aback when he saw Seowoon pointing a bow at him and firing an arrow. The man quickly sliced the arrow in half with his sword. Seowoon then activated his subspace and retrieved the daggers he had stored, throwing them at the intruder. The man used his arm to block the daggers, and Seowoon seized the opportunity to dash toward him, knocking him to the ground. Seowoon disarmed the man, and before finishing him off, he remarked that he had been having a nice dream, and the man had woken him up. The man begged for his life, explaining that he had struggled too hard to survive and couldn't die there. But Seowoon was unmoved. He coldly ended the man's life, stating, "Neither can I." After Seowoon defeated his enemy, a chest surrounded by a green glow appeared. Seowoon believed it was the thing Elder Jang Dochian had mentioned, the life chi. As he touched it, his body absorbed the energy, and he immediately felt a surge of strength. Even though he had absorbed the life chi of just one person, his body felt lighter and significantly stronger. When he checked his status window, Seowoon noticed a new, separate stat related to life chi. He was thrilled that the elder had gifted him something so powerful. However, he realized he shouldn't rely solely on killing to gather life chi. He needed to find other methods as well. Curious about how many people were still alive, Seowoon opened the player count tab and was shocked. Only 24 players remained, and it was only day 5. Just then, he saw the number drop again. Someone else had just died. Meanwhile, another player was brutally eliminated by Nam Sagwang. He had assumed the guy was strong since he approached him alone, but it turned out to be a mistake. Having already killed numerous players, Nam Sagwang began to wonder when this whole ordeal would finally end. He checked the player count tab and saw that 22 players remained. As he scanned the list, one name caught his attention, Jin Seowoon. Nam Sagwang thought he had seen that name earlier. Back with Seowoon, He was fully aware that Nam Sagwang likely had the highest kill count. Seowoon knew he had to avoid him at all costs. He thought to himself that he could barely handle weaker opponents. He still had a long way to go before reaching Nam Sagwang's level. Motivated, he hurried to finish farming before the restricted zone began to shrink. From Orang's chest, the only valuable item Seowoon found was a refined troll's potion. The rest were just trash. After that, he decided to focus on hiding and surviving until the number of players dropped. A week later, Seowoon realized how lucky he had been during the early game. He hadn't looted much since he spent most of his time in hiding, and the gear he did manage to collect was mostly worthless. Still, he had stayed near the forest along the edge of the restricted zone, which helped him avoid any encounters. By day 12 of Cloyd Survival, only 20 players remained. For the past week, the kill log had shown only one name, Nam Sagwang. He was slaughtering everyone. That made Seowoon think the others might also be in hiding, playing it safe, just like him. Moments later, Seowoon noticed a massive explosion in the distance. A fight had broken out, and it wasn't far. Meanwhile, a group of players teamed up, planning to take down Nam Sagwang. He simply smiled and thanked them for saving him the trouble of hunting them down one by one. Then, he made his move, swiftly and effortlessly eliminating the players one after another. This wasn't a battle, it was a one-sided massacre. The kill log made that abundantly clear. Nam Sagwang was on track to win the game unless something unexpected happened. Watching the kill log, Seowoon felt a growing sense of unease. Nam Sagwang had just taken out 9 players at once, making Seowoon wonder if he was using hacks. After defeating the group of players who had teamed up against him, Nam Sagwang scoffed, saying they were nothing, and left their chests behind, along with a staff. That night, the staff was discovered by Escrow, who immediately recognized it as belonging to Elizabeth. Swearing in his own name, Escrow vowed to avenge her. Only 11 players remained. Seowoon thought that if he could just hang in a bit longer, he'd make it into the top 10. But after witnessing the earlier chaos, he knew that to survive against someone like a raid boss, he needed powerful gear. He concluded that by tomorrow morning, the mansion in front of him would likely fall outside the safe zone. It was his last chance for a proper farming run. Seowoon entered the mansion, searching for anything useful. While exploring, he discovered an elixir that could increase internal energy, allowing him to gain inner strength without absorbing life chi. He also picked up a martial arts manual titled Secret Technique, Unstoppable Fist. Just like the circle stone skill, however, the elixir required him to remain still for 3 hours to absorb its effects. As he moved deeper into the mansion, Seowoon found a cellar and suspected something important might be inside. But before he could open it, a massive explosion erupted, blasting him out of the mansion and onto the grass outside. Certain that no one had followed him, he was left wondering how this could have happened. Suddenly, Seowoon was shocked to see a familiar figure, the guy he had seen back in the waiting room. It was Escrow. Escrow hadn't expected his target to survive the explosion and realized that it wasn't just luck that had allowed Nam Sagwang to defeat so many players and survive. He quietly acknowledged Nam Sagwang's strength, saying he would remember his name. Injured but unfazed, Nam Sagwang told Escrow to stop wasting time and come at him directly. The two exchanged words with subtle smiles, tension crackling between them. Meanwhile, watching from a distance, Seowoon was stunned to discover that the fearsome Nam Sagwang, the player responsible for the brutal killing spree, was just a kid. While floating in the air, Escrow began casting a lightning spell at Sagwang. Unable to counter, Sagwang could only dodge the relentless bolts. Growing irritated, Escrow prepared a massive lightning spell, determined to end the battle once and for all. Yet, Sagwang continued to evade every strike, gradually closing the distance between them. As he finally neared, Sagwang leapt toward Escrow, ready to launch a counterattack. However, Escrow swung his staff in retaliation, only to strike through an illusion. Sagwang had already vanished. Escrow's missed attack ignited fires on the ground, and lightning cracked across the sky. Moments later, rain began to pour, shocking Seowoon, who watched from afar, unable to believe what he was witnessing. Not only had Escrow nearly killed Sagwang, he could also manipulate the weather. Failing to sense Sagwang's presence, Escrow assumed he had fled far from the battlefield. Furious, he shouted Sagwang's name and swore to find and kill him. Meanwhile, the injured Sagwang escaped into the distance, struggling to catch his breath. A faint smile formed on his face as he muttered that while escrow may have bested him this time, things would be different next time. The next time, he vowed, he would be the one to right escrow's end. For now, all Sagwon could do was retreat and recover. Escrow searched the area for Nam Sagwon, but after finding no trace of him, he eventually descended and vanished from sight. Thanks to the cloak of hiding, Escrow never noticed Seowoon, who lived to see another day. While cautiously exploring the surroundings, Seowoon came across the thing he had been searching for. He wondered if it was a safe, possibly containing something important. As he opened the entrance, he noticed a staircase descending into darkness. It looked unusually deep. Still, since there were no signs of recent activity, Seowoon decided to proceed. Fortunately, he had taken a lantern from the abandoned house he was scavenging in the day before. With it lit, he made his way down. As he reached the bottom, he wondered if the space was just a food cellar. The thought left him slightly disappointed. There weren't many good farming spots to begin with, and if this was just a storage room for food, it would feel like a complete waste. His disappointment deepened as he thought about what he'd been surviving on: bland, tasteless jerky since his arrival. 1 hour later, Seowoon sat down to rest after enjoying a satisfying meal. He thought to himself that if only he had some white rice, it would have been perfect. He then took out a martial arts manual titled Manual for the Unrestrained Fist. This technique had been developed by a man named Manhwa in his later years. Despite creating the style, Manhwa lived as a laughingstock, having recorded 1,429 matches and 1,429 losses. With no disciples to carry on the art, it eventually faded into obscurity. Even so, Seowoon figured it was better than learning nothing at all. For now, he set the manual aside and turned his attention to the elixir he had brought with him. He hesitated for a moment, recalling the pain he had experienced while activating the circle stone, but his desire to grow stronger outweighed his fear. Without further thought, he drank the elixir. Moments later, Seowoon felt his dantian begin to fill with inner energy. Sweat poured from his body as the effects intensified. It quickly became clear that he wouldn't be able to move for the next 3 hours. 3 hours later, exhausted, Seowoon finally managed to lie down on the floor. After spending an entire week hiding in the forest, fatigue had taken its toll. Taking advantage of the moment, he closed his eyes and allowed himself to rest at last. On day 13 of Cloyd Survival, Seowoon ventured out, and as he had anticipated, the area was close to the restricted zone. He checked the player count and discovered that only 10 players remained. Upon reviewing the kill logs, he noticed that one player had committed suicide. Curious, Seowoon wondered how that person had managed to kill himself. He speculated that the player might have attempted some absurd training method, believing there were no real consequences. Although Seowoon was pleased to have made it to the top 10, achieving it in this manner left a bitter taste in his mouth. He then noticed that the map was shrinking, prompting him to resume his strategy, the same cautious approach that had kept him alive thus far. For someone like him, who lacked any special skills, it was the only way to climb higher. Suddenly, Seowoon noticed something heading his way. An explosion erupted. He wondered where it had come from and immediately thought of a mage, someone capable of summoning such a massive fireball. As the smoke began to clear, he spotted Escrow standing not far away. Escrow explained that he had sensed someone using a detection spell. Initially, he thought it was Nam Sagwon, but now he saw a new face before him. Seowoon, sweating, realized he had gotten careless. In his excitement over his newfound internal energy and speed, he had unknowingly rushed straight into Escrow. Escrow then asked Seowoon if he happened to know the whereabouts of someone named Nam Sagwon, and if he didn't, Escrow said he would have to kill him on the spot. Unbeknownst to them, Sagwon was silently laughing as he hid behind Escrow.